People love the idea of being debt-free. It sounds clean, responsible, heroic. I'm paying off all my debt, they say, as if that automatically means they're winning the money game. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Paying off debt the wrong way can actually make you poorer, because what matters isn't whether you pay it off, it's when, how, and at what cost. Most people think being debt-free equals financial freedom. That's not freedom. That's a reset. The real question isn't how fast can I pay my debt, it's what am I giving up to do it? Because if you drain your cash, kill your investments, and lose your momentum just to hit zero, congratulations, you're broke again, just without the interest rate. Debt is a tool, not a demon. Used wrong, it'll bury you. Used right, it'll build you. But here's the problem. Society doesn't teach strategy, it teaches fear. Everyone's told to pay everything off as fast as possible, without realizing that money isn't moral. It doesn't care about guilt or pride. It only cares about math. So let's talk about the ugly side of debt payoff. When it's smart, when it's stupid, and why some people ruin their finances trying to do the right thing. People don't pay off debt because it's mathematically smart. They pay it off because it feels moral. Debt carries shame, guilt, that constant pressure in the back of your mind telling you that you owe someone, that you're behind, that you're not a real adult until everything is at zero. So instead of making strategic decisions, people make emotional ones. They chase the feeling of relief, not the reality of growth. You see this everywhere. Someone has a little extra cash, and the first instinct is to throw it at a loan, even if the loan is cheap and the opportunity cost is enormous. It's not about numbers, it's about anxiety. They want to silence that inner voice for a moment, and debt repayment gives them a hit of psychological dopamine. It feels clean, it feels productive, it feels responsible, but feelings don't build wealth, decisions do. The emotional trap works like this. You hate the idea of owing money, so you sacrifice everything else to eliminate the debt. Savings, investments, emergency funds. You empty yourself just to watch a balance hit zero for 1 second of pride. Then what? You're free but fragile. No cash cushion, no investments, no leverage. One emergency, and you're right back in debt again. Congratulations, you just sprinted in a circle. People forget that being debt-free doesn't mean being safe. It just means you removed one problem and created another. You traded interest payments for vulnerability. You traded momentum for pride, and pride doesn't grow at 8% a year. There's another emotional layer too. People chase debt freedom to impress others. They want to say, look, I'm responsible now. It's just another form of validation chasing. You're still letting outside opinions dictate your financial decisions, just in a more socially acceptable way. Paying off debt becomes a performance instead of a strategy, and performances are expensive. The worst part is that the emotional trap makes you blind. You stop asking the only questions that matter. What's the interest rate? What's my opportunity cost? What's my cash flow? All the logic gets drowned by the desire to feel clean again, and emotional decisions almost always cost you money. Debt isn't a moral stain. It's a number. It's a tool. It's a contract. Nothing more. But as long as you treat it like a monster under the bed, you'll keep making scared decisions instead of smart ones. And scared decisions are how people stay broke even while doing the right thing. Here's the part almost nobody understands. Paying off debt feels like progress, but it can destroy the single thing that actually keeps you alive financially: cash flow. People sprint to kill their debt and forget they need liquidity to function. They dump every spare dollar into repayments, proud of their discipline, only to wake up one day realizing they've built a mathematically tidy life with zero financial oxygen. Cash flow is your ability to survive the unexpected. It's the buffer between you and panic. It's the difference between handling a problem with calm or collapsing into chaos. When you drain your cash just to hit zero debt faster, you're not being responsible. You're playing financial Russian roulette. One flat tire, one dental emergency, one lost job. That's all it takes to erase the victory you worked for. And when that moment hits, guess what saves you? Not your pride, not your moral purity, cash. People don't realize that paying debt is irreversible. Once the money leaves your account, it's gone. You can't pull equity out of your student loan. You can't withdraw extra payments from a car loan. When life hits you, there is no refund button. And that's how people end up worse than before, debt-free, but forced right back into borrowing, because they starved their cash flow to zero. This is the paradox. You pay debt aggressively to feel safer, but the more aggressively you pay it, the less safe you actually become, because safety doesn't come from having zero debt. It comes from having the flexibility to handle anything without collapsing. Cash flow is flexibility. It's agility. It's resilience. Debt freedom without cash flow is just a clean-looking bank statement sitting on top of a financial time bomb. Here's the other problem. When you focus on killing debt as fast as possible, you delay building assets, you delay investing, you delay compounding, you delay the very engine that creates wealth in the first place. And by the time you're finally ready to invest, You've wasted years, years that could have grown into something real, years that no amount of debt freedom can buy back. So while you're obsessing over wiping out a loan at 5% interest, you might be missing out on investments that return 8, 10, 12%. You're losing money by saving money. It sounds insane, because society glorifies debt freedom as if it's the promised land. But math doesn't care about your feelings. Math cares about margins. That's the cash flow paradox. You can sacrifice your entire financial foundation in the name of doing the right thing, and the cost of that mistake is invisible until it's too late. Most people throw all debt into one bucket and label it evil. They treat a credit card the same way they treat a mortgage. They treat a payday loan the same way they treat a business loan. They see numbers, panic, and start swinging. But not all debt is the same. Some debt drains you, some debt builds you. And if you don't understand the difference, you'll spend your whole life fighting the wrong enemy. Bad debt is simple. It takes money out of your pocket and gives nothing back. High interest, no return, pure extraction. Credit card debt, payday loans, personal loans for impulse purchases, financing things that lose value the moment you touch them. Bad debt eats you alive quietly. It's financial rot. It spreads, it compounds against you, and it uses your impatience as fuel. Good debt is the opposite. Good debt is leverage. It puts money into your pocket or increases your earning potential. Mortgages for rental properties, business loans that fuel operations, student loans that translate into higher income, even low-interest financing, you leverage to keep your cash invested. Good debt doesn't shrink your life, it expands it. The problem is that people treat everything like bad debt because they don't trust themselves. They think debt is dangerous because their habits are dangerous, and they're half right. Debt multiplies whatever you are. If you're disciplined, it amplifies your growth. If you're reckless, it accelerates your downfall. Debt itself is neutral. You are the variable. This is where people sabotage themselves. They panic about owing money and rush to wipe out the good debt along with the bad. They pay off low-interest loans that actually help their cash flow. They eliminate leverage that could have built them long-term assets. They kill their momentum because they don't understand the mechanics. They're solving the wrong problem. Imagine paying off a 3% mortgage early while carrying zero investments. It feels responsible, but it's financially backwards. You're giving up potential returns far above 3% just to get an emotional high. You traded growth for comfort, and comfort is expensive. On the other hand, ignoring bad debt is just as destructive. Credit card interest compounds against you like fire. These debts don't wait. They don't plateau. They spiral. That's why the smartest people pay bad debt down strategically, while refusing to touch good debt too early. They eliminate what hurts and keep what helps. The truth is, most people don't have a debt problem. They have a categorization problem. They don't organize. They don't prioritize. They don't analyze interest rates, opportunity costs, or long-term returns. They lump everything together and try to erase it all at once. And in that emotional panic, they wipe out the debt that could have built their foundation. Understanding good debt versus bad debt is one of the few distinctions that separates financially stable people from financially exhausted ones. If you get this wrong, no amount of hard work will save you. If you get this right, $500,000 becomes a lever, not a burden. Here's one of the biggest reasons the wealth gap keeps widening. Poor and middle-class people obsess over paying off debt. Rich people obsess over building assets. One group is trying to clean the past. The other is trying to secure the future. And that single difference in focus creates an entire lifetime of financial distance. Poor people chase the feeling of relief. They want to eliminate any number that makes them anxious, even if the price of that relief is their entire savings. They believe that the key to stability is having zero debt, so they sacrifice everything else to get there. They wipe their accounts, empty their investments, stop contributing to retirement, and then proudly tell everyone they are finally free. In reality, they are one emergency away from collapsing again, because they traded wealth building for emotional comfort. Meanwhile, the rich play a different game. They do not care about eliminating debt. They care about maximizing return. They let low-interest debt sit quietly in the background, while they pour every extra dollar into assets that grow faster than the debt costs them. They know a 3% loan is irrelevant when their investments return 8, 10, or 12%. They use money like a tool, not a therapy session. This is why the gap exists. Poor people focus on subtraction. Rich people focus on multiplication. Poor people ask, how do I remove this burden? Rich people ask, how do I make this leverage? One mindset avoids discomfort. The other builds momentum. The difference becomes more obvious with time. The person who drains their savings to pay off everything ends up stable but stagnant. They have no capital, no compounding, no cash flow. They are debt-free but wealth-poor. The person who prioritizes investing ends up with time on their side. Their money compounds while their debt slowly fades into irrelevance. 10 years later, the person who made the responsible choice is stuck in the exact same spot, while the person who understood leverage has doubled or tripled their net worth. This is the wealth gap mistake. People think debt freedom is the finish line. It's not. It's a phase. The finish line is financial autonomy, and autonomy requires assets, not pride. Rich people don't start by eliminating every debt. They start by eliminating vulnerability. They build cash flow. They create buffers. They invest early, so time can do the heavy lifting. They let compounding work for them, while everyone else is busy obsessing over every dollar they owe. The truth is not complicated. If you pay debt at the cost of growth, you stay small. If you prioritize growth at the cost of unnecessary debt, you become fragile. The game is to know which debts matter, which don't, and how to use your money in ways that move your life forward, not sideways. Poor people chase zero. Rich people chase leverage, and leverage is what gets you out of the rat race, not a clean credit report. After all this, let's get one thing straight. Paying off debt is not the enemy. Paying it off without strategy is. There are moments where killing a debt is the smartest move you can make. Moments where the math lines up, your cash flow improves, your stress drops, and your financial foundation gets stronger. The goal isn't to avoid paying debt. The goal is to avoid paying it blindly. So when is it actually the right move? First, when the interest rate is eating you alive. High-interest debt is a parasite. Credit card balances, payday loans, anything over 10 or 12%. This kind of debt compounds against you faster than most investments can save you. Here, speed matters. You don't negotiate with financial predators. You eliminate them before they drain the life out of your future. Second, paying off debt is smart when it strengthens your monthly breathing room. Some debts may have low interest but heavy payments. If clearing one of them frees up a big chunk of monthly cash flow, that freedom can do more for your long-term stability than putting the same money into an investment. Sometimes the math isn't about percentages. Sometimes it's about reducing financial friction so you can stay consistent. Cash flow is the foundation that holds everything else up. Third, paying off debt is smart when you already have the basics covered. A small emergency fund, consistent contributions to investments, and a budget that doesn't feel like a punishment. The problem isn't debt payoff. The problem is doing it before you have a financial base. Once you have stability, eliminating debt becomes a powerful next step rather than a desperate first one. And the fourth moment, the one almost nobody admits, is when peace is worth more than return. Money is math, but humans aren't. If a small low-interest debt is draining your mental energy, distracting you, or keeping you from focusing on bigger moves, paying it off might be worth the trade. But this only works if you're honest with yourself. It can't be an excuse. It has to be a calculated decision, not emotional relief disguised as strategy. The key is understanding that debt payoff should be intentional, not impulsive. You run the numbers, you analyze the timeline, you evaluate your opportunity cost. Then you choose the path that actually strengthens your position instead of weakening it. Debt can be a weight or a lever. The difference is whether you attack it with fear or with intelligence. When you pay debt at the right moment, it doesn't shrink your future, it expands it. Because the goal isn't to be debt-free. The goal is to be unshakable.